Oil prices are climbing as the EU and the US call for another set of tough sanctions on Russia, one of the world's largest fuel exporters. French President Emmanuel Macron is the latest world leader to advocate for a ban on Russian crude and coal shipments. Meanwhile, Washington has stopped American banks from processing Russian debt payments using money held in the US. That means bondholders are at risk of losing some $600 million. The moves follow the discovery of mass graves in Bucha, a Ukrainian city that government forces have retaken from Moscow. A barrel of crude is now trading near $110 after the international benchmark Brent rose 1.5%. Now, for more on the story, let's go to Danni Hewson. She's a financial analyst at AJ Bell and joins us from Huddersfield in the UK. Welcome back to the program, Danni. Now, we see the economic walls closing in on Russia, more sanctions on its energy sector, and a lot of its money that's overseas is basically frozen. How much more can Moscow take before it buckles to the pressure?
It depends on what sanctions are forthcoming, because at the moment, with the sanctions that have currently been imposed, it can take quite a bit more. You can see that just by seeing how the ruble has recovered. Russia has done a huge amount to deal with the sanctions that are in place to try and keep everything turning. But of course, one of the key things which has happened is this move by the United States Treasury not to allow Russia to make this payment on its debt coupon. If it defaults, then that leaves it in a precarious position. Clearly, at the moment, with sanctions the way they are, borrowing additional finances from Western financial institutions is not a possibility, but it does impact their ability going forward. And that is something that President Putin will be thinking a lot about. But at the moment, clearly, big thing is oil and gas. We know that the constant demand for oil and gas and the fact that prices have skyrocketed means that although initially the amount that was being bought from Russia was impacted, that's kind of recovered. But even then, it was mitigated by those rising prices. And while it's making billions of dollars every day, then clearly it has an awful lot to keep propping up that war chest.
Right, you mentioned the prospect of a default on Russian debt because of all these assets that have been frozen in foreign banks. What does that do to the Russian economy?
Well, the Russian economy is already struggling, though, as I say, the ruble has recovered somewhat. We are expecting, looking at figures, for it to be plunged into a long and deep recession. The big question, though, is whether or not that ability to access the US dollar in America to pay off debt would make President Putin look to use his reserves of US dollars in Russia to pay off debt which is coming up in the future, or will he want to continue to use it to keep living standards in Russia, to keep paying pensions and people's wages? Because there may come a choice. If that crunch, if those sanctions do tighten up, then choices get more and more difficult. And it means that life for the Russian people potentially get more difficult. But that's it, isn't it? It's a game of brinkmanship at the moment. Who's going to blink first?
All right. Danni Hewson, always a pleasure to have you from AJ Bell in Huddersfield in the UK.